Ever ordered a CNC router that looked amazing in the photos, only to end up wrestling with a machine that never quite cut the way you expected? I've been there. The promise of a sleek metal frame and a high-speed spindle can feel like a baited hook, and when you finally plug it in, the reality can be a lot messy. That's why I'm breaking down the FoxAlien Z Pro today, so you can see past the glossy listing and decide whether it's the right tool for your workshop or just another piece of equipment that will sit idle. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of work the Z Pro is built for. This is a 3-axis CNC router that claims to handle wood, soft aluminum, and a handful of other hobby-grade materials. If you're a maker who wants to move beyond a handheld router and start carving signage, small furniture parts, or custom enclosures, the machine's footprint, roughly the size of a full-sized printer, fits nicely on a standard garage bench. The real question is whether its design actually makes that step up feel smooth, or if you'll end up spending more time on calibration than on cutting. The first thing that stands out is the use of closed-loop NEMA 23-stepper motors paired with a ball screw drive. In plain English, that means the motors have built-in feedback to correct missed steps, and the ball screws give you a more precise linear motion compared to the cheap lead screws you see on entry-level kits. In practice, I've found that this combination translates to less ghosting when the spindle hits a dense piece of hardwood. The cuts stay true to the code, and you don't hear the motor stutter the way you would with an open-loop system that's fighting its own inertia. For anyone who's tried a low-cost router and ended up with jagged edges or a warped pattern, that feedback loop is a tangible upgrade. That said, the ball screw system isn't a magic bullet. It does require a bit more care when you're swapping out the workpiece. The nut on the screw can be sensitive to dust and metal shavings, so you'll want to keep a small vacuum or a brush handy to clear debris after each run. If you're planning on milling aluminum on a regular basis, you'll also notice that the spindle, while advertised as 400W, can get warm after a few minutes of continuous cutting. In my own test, I ran a series of 6mm deep slots in a 3mm aluminum sheet, and the motor temperature rose enough that I had to pause for a minute to let it cool. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a practical trade-off you'll have to manage if you want to keep the tool running at peak accuracy. Installation is another area where the Z Pro tries to stand out. The kit arrives partially assembled, and the instructions walk you through mounting the frame, connecting the stepper drivers, and wiring the power supply. Most reviewers I've spoken with say the process takes about 2 to 3 hours for someone with a basic understanding of electronics. The real win here is the modular design. The frame has pre-drilled mounting points that let you upgrade to linear rails later on, or swap in a higher torque spindle if your projects demand it. If you're the type of maker who likes to future-proof their gear, that upgradable architecture is worth the extra initial effort. Now, let's talk about the software side. The machine ships ready to work with popular open-source controllers like GRBL, and also plays nicely with Fusion 360's post-processor. Setting up the workflow took me a few minutes. Connect the USB cable, fire up the control software, and jog the axis to confirm motion. The only hiccup was the need to fine-tune the step sperm setting for the ball screws, which is a one-time calibration but can be a little intimidating if you've never touched firmware before. Once that's dialed in, the router follows the path you feed it without any noticeable lag. Who should consider buying the FoxAlien Z Pro? If you're a hobbyist who has already outgrown a handheld router and wants to start producing repeatable parts, think custom keycaps, decorative wall art, or small batch prototypes. This machine hits a sweet spot. Its closed-loop motors give you confidence that the tool won't lose steps on longer runs, and the ball screw drive keeps the tolerance tight enough for most wood and soft metal applications. The upgradable design also means you can start with the base kit and later invest in linear rails or a more powerful spindle as your budget and skill level grow. On the flip side, if you're looking for a plug-and-play solution that will run all day on heavy aluminum or composite materials without any downtime, you might be better off with a more industrial-grade CNC that has water cooling and a higher-rated spindle. Likewise, if you're just testing the waters and only need to carve occasional wooden signs, a cheaper laser cutter or a 2-axis router could give you the same results with less setup complexity. The